Ja, slaat een beetje door.
From Stardock, a co-working space in Amsterdam and in Rotterdam. At the moment we are in the city center of Amsterdam, and I have Jules van Bruggen, the CEO of Sidley, next to me. He's CEO of a babysitting platform, and we'll talk a bit more about scaling up his business. As I already said, he's a former docker, and maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. As well, you already announced my name. So I'm the founder, indeed, of Sidley. It used to be called differently. When I started this, it used to be called Oudermatch in the Netherlands, Sitter Italia in Italy, and we have a bunch of local names. But since 2.5 years back, we rebranded everything to Sidley. So yeah, I basically, I used to work as a marketing manager, global marketing manager at ING Direct, which was an internet bank. And at some point I decided to quit my job in order to pursue this adventure. And it turned out to go all well, so yeah.
Yeah, because what was the main reason that you started your company and the concept of it?
Yeah, it actually was a personal experience that we were having when our baby was born. We lived in Amsterdam, and it was quite a struggle to find childcare because we had to wait for basically a year in order to get access to daycare centers, and we subscribed at 6 of them. So it was a serious issue, and there was nothing online there back then. This is 2009 speaking, where we had a solution. So what I did, I had a job back then, so I basically asked some friends that were developers to develop a very basic website where parents could connect with each other. That was the very initial idea. So the initial idea was to have parents connected with each other, for them to share a babysitter or to look after each other's kids. So that was the name Ouder Match, Parent Match, which basically was the meaning of the whole concept. So yeah, it was more a trial, more a hobby really. And after a year or so, we added babysitters to the platform because I noticed that was also a demand. We added childminders to the platform. And at some point we had like 5,000 users, I think, in Amsterdam or in surroundings. And once I had that, let's say, skill, which is still not a lot, but 5,000 at least allows you to see the mechanism on your platform, on your marketplace. So we saw people connecting to each other, sending messages to each other, paying. So that was actually my very MVP, and I just needed that for me to decide to quit my job, because I didn't want to just quit it and then hope for the best. I really had to, well, I had to have something solid before I had to want to make that decision. So in 2011 I made that decision, and from then onwards I just grew the company.
So that was the initial idea. What's the idea nowadays then behind Sidley?
Yeah, actually the idea in itself is not very different. So it still allows you as a parent to find a babysitter or a childminder. We left the idea of connecting parents with each other because that was a very niche need. The main demand was in the childcare area. So really finding somebody who would take care of your kids. So in that sense, the basics are still there, but obviously it has developed, and the platform has been more scalable, and well, many more improvements. But the idea is still there.
It's still the same practically.
Yes, basically.
And when you decided to leave your own job to fully put your focus on Sidley, how did you turn the initial idea into a full business? You had already a skill of 5,000?
Yeah, so I earned literally then 500 euros a month when I quit my job, so it was not a lot. So I obviously had to, needed some money in order to pay my mortgage and all the rest that needs to be paid. So I did that from my savings money that I had, and this allowed me, so I give myself a deadline of a year for me to prove the concept and to make from this 500 at least a couple of thousand. So I didn't have a clear deadline, but I want to be self-sustainable at that point. So I gave myself a year in order to achieve that. That was actually, I never got to that evaluation because it already grew like quite well. But the biggest is, so I can advise everyone else who is in a job and has this passion of starting a business. I would always try to do something, if you're able to do so, try to do something or create an MVP along your job, because it really stretches your horizon and trial period. Because it took me 2 years in order to tweak it and understand how it all worked. And then I still had only 500 euros turnover a month. So but it really allowed me to test this MVP and also give me the courage really to quit that job.
Okay. And what's your job nowadays with Sidley? It's connecting people still,
Yeah.
but what's your the legal structure of the company?
Well, it's a BV, so it's a Dutch LTD, limited company. We have the software in a separate entity in order to protect that, so that we still have ownership. Whatever happens, that we still have the software in our ownership. So that's let's say the mother company, and then we have this other entity that is basically exploiting the business. So basically getting the revenues, but also making the costs. And that's basically it. So we have two entities.
Okay, and I don't know really the right words for this, but you're like a mediator in some sort, but you're not really the guy who sells it, right?
No, well, I think you can call it a marketplace, which is nowadays quite a common thing. If you look up marketplace, you will see a whole bunch of marketplaces in various niches. But back then, when I started this, I didn't even know what a marketplace was. But now you call it a marketplace because you connect two groups, or marketplace could connect more groups of people, but we connect basically two groups of people with each other. Yeah. We don't have an active role in intermediary, so we do not intervene between those two parties, but we give access to the platform for them to reach out to each other. Okay,
I think that's a pretty clear answer. Like a few years ago, you had your dreams where you wanted to go with Sidley.
Yeah.
Did your dreams change?
Yeah, they change all the time. I think it's. I think other entrepreneurs might recognize this. At the first stage, my ambition was to get at least a free, independent life, where I didn't have to worry about my financing. But that was my ambition, to just make something cool. I had my own little business, and that was all that. That was my initial idea. Then you see your company growing, then you say, okay, let's go international. You know, why not? Let's move to the next country. Then that works out. Then okay, let's not, besides Europe, go to Latin America, and then and still I have, let's say, every time I have another horizon to go to, and that's, I think, a common thing. I will never be happy with what I have now. I'm always somehow unhappy with what I have now because I want to move forward.
Yeah. And what's the BHack for the future then, at the moment?
Yeah, BHack, if you ask me what is the BHack for the next 3-4 years, I would say let's go to 20 million users. We have now 4 million, so it's still quite a distance. Yeah. But I think we can do that. So I would really not so much, because I used to have international expansion. I want to go to so many countries. But now I changed it a little bit into number of users, and actually you should actually translate it back to number of active users, actively on your platform. But I think if we can make the 20 million in the next 3 to 4 years, I would be quite satisfied.
And you're already operating in 13 countries?
Yes, indeed.
And that's 4 million users. How many countries would be 20 million users?
Well, you can't say, because we recently launched in Brazil, which has a population of 200 million or over 200 million. So we could, I think, already grow there with millions. Same for Mexico, which has a population of 140 million. So I'm not sure if the number of countries would really.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't really tell you. It doesn't tell you anything. I mean, for instance, we're also active in Finland, which has a population of 5 million. Yeah. And that's also, in fact, the challenge for scalability, because at some point you want to make real big steps, and then countries like Finland and Denmark doesn't really allow you to scale in that sense, because they have the limitation in population. So actually we are now looking at larger populations where we can scale up easier. Yeah.
And how many users are active of the 4 million?
It differs per season. September, for instance, we have around 600,000 active users. But probably, for instance, in December, when there's Christmas holidays, people don't tend to think about their childcare needs or finding a job, then it will be half of it or something.
Oh, all right. Yeah. All right. Okay. So a lot of users. You have the platform, and what's the profit model?
Yeah, so it's based on subscriptions, premium subscriptions. It's very much relatable to, for instance, dating. That's actually when I started this. The only reference point I had was dating, because that was the only marketplace, if you want to call it like that, where people connected with each other. For the rest, there was nothing. So that was my point of reference. So this is also how I created my business model. I want to charge people for them to be able to connect with each other, like on a dating platform. Obviously, the target group is entirely different, but the mechanism is very relatable. So you can reach out to, you can have access for free. You can see CVs from babysitters or families. And then once you decide to reach out, you need to go into a premium membership.
Yeah, you already told me that you also have connections with David from the Inner Circle.
Yeah.
We talked about. He was here last CEO talk, so that's.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's in that sense there are some commonalities. You know, there's we also discussed quite a few times the challenges that we face. Yeah.
And then the number of users. Obviously, we are still in the COVID-19 crisis. Did it had any struggles with the...
Well, in all honesty, it was quite a scary time when the lockdown started in March in Europe. We saw everything dropping back from 100% to back to 10%. So all of a sudden everything dropped. Users, new premium signups, everything. So that was really scary because I didn't know back then how long this would last, the lockdown. So yeah, we really had to do some stress management.
Yeah.
So we looked at the forecasting. So how much could we last? How long could we survive if this would say take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? So we had some scenarios written out and calculations how long we would survive without any demand. We triggered or we invented some new services. For instance, we thought of, well, if the babysitters can't find work for babysitting, why not have them mobilized for doing groceries for elderly? So that's something we initiated. We had a business service, Sidley at Work, something we never really thought of. So we had a lot of, basically on the one hand, we made a calculation how long would we survive if we would not get anything. In the meantime, we also try to create some alternative services for us to basically, get your income and find needs somewhere else. But luckily this trend, this downward trend stopped once the lockdowns finished. And then we saw the opposite effect, where people finally were allowed to go out, wanted to go out, want to go to work, back to work, but they needed childcare. So then we, in June, July, we saw a huge demand, June especially, a huge demand in requests, both from a job perspective as well as from the family perspective. Most people got fired during this crisis, not just in the Netherlands, because Netherlands I think is quite fine, but if you look at Latin America or South Europe, it was quite intense for those people because nobody could find any job anymore. So we had a huge demand on people that were looking for alternative jobs, babysitting jobs, and as well the demand for childcare. So, and we're still in that phase of that there's a huge demand in these very insecure times, especially in Latin America, for instance Mexico or Spain, where we have now parents are quite nervous about whether schools will remain open. So they're already looking for backup plans for once the children needs to go, have their schools from home again. So yeah, in that sense, initially it was quite stressful, but then all of a sudden we saw the opposite happening, and we're still in that opposite upward trend.
And you didn't use any of the alternatives? So
yes, we did. Definitely we did. But in all honesty, because there's, for instance, finding people for your groceries is not really relevant now anymore. No. It used to be, not so much in the Netherlands. We also saw quite a difference between the adaptiveness of this service in Northern Europe versus South Europe and Latin America, Where in Northern Europe this didn't really pick up.
No.
Nobody was looking
it,
for,
yeah.
I don't know why, maybe it's more individualistic, I don't know. But in Latin America, it was a huge demand. We created a real need in the market where basically it really eased our drop, because we all of a sudden had, instead of people looking for childcare, there were people looking for grocery services. But now also in Latin America, that's all over now, so we stopped that service for now.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And then where do you base the admission fee on for Sidley?
Yeah, I use a few variables. So one is obviously the competitive pricing. So if you look at competitors in the market, if there are competitors, then look at competitors. Also look at local purchasing indices. So what are people used to pay for alternative services, so utilities, or there's this website where basically gives you a benchmark of how services are priced in a certain country. So because I want to understand what people are used to pay, in order for us to define, what is an acceptable price. Now, for instance, in Brazil, we have a price range between 5 and up to 7 euros per month. And in the Netherlands, for instance, between 9 and 15 euros a month. So it's half, pretty much. And it makes kind of sense, because obviously here we also have a higher purchasing power. But that's what we do in the beginning, and at some point we're going to test pricing and see what the optimum price is.
Yeah, do you have a lot of competitors?
It's a very fragmented market. So in the Netherlands, I think we have quite a few competitors, local competitors, so not so much international, but people or companies that operate, for instance, mainly in Amsterdam or in the big cities in the Netherlands, but they don't let's say outside the big cities. So that's like say, yes, we compete in Amsterdam, but we don't in a province, a place, a village or something. But international competitors we hardly have. There's one, I think, international competitor, a US competitor, that is kind of a competitor, but not really, because they're still very focused on their home market, US, and the second market, Germany, where we're not active. So in that sense, it's not a very strong competitor. But yeah, it very much depends on the country. In fact, it's also the way we select countries to roll out to. We don't up till now, I released, or I qualified a country to be attractive to go to based on competitiveness. Now, obviously, the Netherlands was the first country, and back then we didn't have any competitor because we were the first. But if I would have to decide again, would I go? If I now had to launch a startup in this niche, I would never go to the Netherlands anymore.
No? Why
no,
not?
it's far crowded. It's a crowded place now, and I think we're still market leader, but it's you still have to share your pie with multiple others. Where if you have the opportunity to go to a market where there's none, why not go there?
And how do you manage to be the market leader still? And
it's you need to just be the best in your niche. So it's you need to be good at your marketing, top marketing skills. You need to be very good in your UX. You need to never stop your product development. Always think in the next step. So what are the trends in the market? How do we move towards that trend? That sounds a bit vague, but it's always it's basically always look. As I said in the beginning, never be satisfied. You always need to look for the next step to take in all areas. In your team, which is very important. In your product development, in your marketing, it's basically a very ongoing process, and in that sense, you need to be the best at all aspects.
It really sounds if it's all went so successful the last few years. But what was the biggest bottleneck or the biggest fuck up in the past few years?
Yeah, well, fuck up sounds maybe something that I would have done differently if I could do it over, but that's not the case. We also failed in a few countries. But actually I embrace failure in that sense, because it also learns you what to do, what not to do in the next phase. So for instance, my second country was Germany. So I was in the Netherlands, I went to Germany. It was still all on my own, and a few developers, and it failed because I had competitors of, I don't know, they were funded with tens of millions of euros. They had teams of 200 people in Berlin, and that was me, thinking I would be able to beat them, which was obviously complete naive, but it did learn me to understand the dynamics in a market. Because I looked at, when I launched into this market, I looked at, okay, what are the marketing costs if I would do this campaign? Oh, they're quite okay. What is what are the number of competitors that we have? A bunch of 3, 4, but they look quite bad. I thought, I think I can handle it. Yeah. Now, obviously, that decision was in itself very naive because I didn't have the funding in order to really make a difference there. So yes, Germany was a fuck up, and then I went to Poland, which was another fuck up, and then we went to Turkey, which was also a fuck up. So those 3 countries we failed, or it's not really failing, we just pulled out. And that was in itself a process, a learning skill, because in Germany I really had troubles with pulling out. And that's also a mental thing. You've done so much that at some point you just want to achieve, you want to be successful, and it took me a year for me to decide to pull out. Then there was Poland. It was not in that order, but then we went to Italy, it was a success, Spain a success. Then we went to Poland, and I already saw the early indicators, this is not going to be the winner. Yeah. And in 5 months, I decided to pull out. Then there was Turkey, I don't know when exactly, a couple of years back. And I pulled out in, I think, a month. In 4 weeks, we pulled out. So we immediately saw, okay, this is not going to be it. Yeah. Pull out. We're not going to burn our money here. We're just going to try the next country. So fuck up, not really, because it also allowed me to have more educated opinions to make in following countries.
So the most important lesson you've learned doing so was. You have to do more research in the market or something. Yeah,
it's research. It's also, you need to do research, but you need to know what to research. And once you make a mistake, next time, okay, I should check that mistake. What were the dynamics behind that mistake? Yeah. So obviously we still do researches when we move to the next country, but we also take those, let's say, variables around that mistake into account. Okay. So for instance, in Turkey, Turkey has no competition. So brilliant. We had no marketing. The marketing spend was extremely low. Facebook's usage was quite high. Everything, all the dots were, all the check boxes were in green. But what I didn't know, what I did not take into account in Turkey, is that the online savviness is rather low. So many people didn't even have an email address. So they start filling in their mobile phone number, which our system could not cope with. No. So, and they didn't have a clue what we were about. They thought we were some kind of employment agency. Oh, okay. So those kind of things you need to take into account when selecting the next country, which I never had considered before.
No, I can understand that. And a total different topic I actually want to talk about is how do you select the babysitters? Plays a huge role.
The thing is that we don't select babysitters, the parents do, and that's also a very important, I think, proposition that we have. So we want to make sure that you as a parent have at least 100 babysitters to choose from within a kilometer radius. Yeah. And I think we can promise that. So it's not for us to decide who's your perfect babysitter. It's for them to decide. Yeah. Now, obviously, we do have some checks in our process to see if the babysitter is appropriate or if everything is okay. That's a thing that we have, but we do not have, let's say, we don't promise any screening, or we don't do any offline interviews, because that's simply not doable. We have now 6,000 registrations a day, 6,000 babysitters a day. Yeah, how can you possibly manage that? So that's impossible. So so I think it's very important for us to be clear on what you are and what you're not.
Yeah.
We're not an agency, we're not a, let's say, a nanny agency, no, we're a marketplace that allows you to select hundreds of babysitters in your area.
Yeah, and you have to choose yourself.
Exactly.
And how do you roll with the trustworthy topic?
Yeah, well, trustworthiness, of course, is a very hot topic, and it's something that we really want. It's one of the most important things in our business, I think, to be trustworthy. And there are two ways of doing so. One way is, as I just explained to you, to be very explicit what we are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't guarantee. Yeah, the babysitters around you are the best match. We have interviewed them. We've done everything we could. No, so in that sense, we need to be very transparent, and we are, I think, on our websites. On the other side, we also need to just do some basic checks. Now, I'm not going to tell you all the checks because I don't think that's appropriate. But for instance, an example that we do apply is we screen a photo on the quality. Mm-hmm. A photo obviously is very important. It's the first impression. Now, what we used to have as a problem is that a lot of babysitters, especially young babysitters, use Snapchat filters or Instagram filters on their faces.
Really?
Yeah, it's totally stupid. You know, why would you do that? But apparently, clearly, they didn't know. Okay. Which looks kind of unprofessional. You know, it also expresses to us as a platform. Mm-hmm. So we applied a screening that gave them advice: what kind of photos should you show? Yeah. So and that's basically an example of a way of making a scalable, apply a scalable way of screening or validation, if you like, mm-hmm. Without doing a full face-to-face screening.
Do you have like a template on your website which babysitters who'd like to work for you can use as a CV or something like that, or?
Well, they go through a menu. When they subscribe, they go through a menu. They tell about their past experience. Mm-hmm. They tell about their what kind of age category experience do they have, how many years of experience do they have. Yeah. They add references. They show recommendations of other parents. So it's a very much social proofed, not only social. So they give us. We help them filling in a CV by asking very explicit questions. And on the one hand, we want to also have a social proof there, which basically means that other families are giving their reviews on about this babysitter.
And then the parents can click on the babysitter they'd like, and then how do you control that they answer the right questions? Is that mandatory or only visible for the parents and the babysitter?
What do you mean? If it's mandatory during the registration process? Or?
Yeah, the conversations between the babysitter and the parents.
Yeah, we do not interfere in those conversations. Okay. So we do not facilitate that conversation. It's up to the parents to start a conversation, or the babysitter to start a conversation, and then it's them who either have a match or not. So we do not really actively intervene. I'm not saying we will never do that. I can imagine that we give some, for instance, future developments. We give some suggestions how you should, position yourself mm-hmm. to a parent. But at this point, it's really a platform that basically allows you to send messages mm-hmm. and reply messages.
And the parents and the babysitters are coming to you, or what is the best acquisition platform or channel for you?
We have multiple channels, so social media, search, a lot of referrals as well. Mm-hmm. I think it's also a general learning. I think any entrepreneur should apply that you should never rely on just one single channel. Mm-hmm. Always try to make sure that you are, let's say, you're spreading your dependencies, because what if, for instance, Google search determines you to be whatever, not very relevant anymore, and drops you to the next page, then it might finish your company if you're really relying on Google search, for instance. So I always try to diversify the marketing channels as much as we can.
And that's because your target group is on all channels?
Of course. Instagram, Facebook. Instagram is mainly a good channel for babysitters. Facebook mainly for parents. It changes now because the parents who are now 30s are also on Instagram. But it's a funny change because 5 years back all parents were on Facebook. Now they tend to be also on Instagram. Snapchat, for instance, is a channel that we're using. So there are a bunch of channels that we Snapchat is clearly a channel for young babysitters, mainly teenagers. So it differs a little bit.
Do you have any specific tips or tricks for our viewers?
Yeah, well, if it comes to marketing, I would say try to always have in the back of your mind scalability. So don't try to, Okay, at the beginning I had this, I learned it myself. Maybe that's tip number one. Learn it yourself.
Okay.
Never rely on an agency. So all the agencies that might listen in, they might not like what I'm saying, but never rely on an agency if it's your core business. If it's something, let's say secondary or, but then fine. But if it's your core business, you should learn it yourself, or you should have somebody in the team who's one of your co-founders who has those skills. So that's number one. And then once you have applied and once you go international and once you really gain skill, I think you need to make sure that you automate your marketing in order to scale it. Because there's no way for you to be able to manage, in our case, for instance, 13 countries or whatever ambition you might have by doing the same as you did in the beginning.
Yeah.
So we have tools in place to do that. That allows you to scale, for instance, social media or but also just the structure that we have in Google search is very much built for scale. So, and it takes time. It really takes some preparation to do that. How you do this, it's almost mathematics. You need to really create a structure that allows you to do this 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times without applying as much work as that factor.
Yeah. You already mentioned that you should have somebody in your team for that. How many team members do you have at the moment?
I think 32 now. 32. It's always a bit tricky question because it also depends who you count as a team member, and I count everyone who is a team member, and also I hope to treat them as such. So we have a lot of freelancers, but we also have employed people, and I don't really make that distinguish. For instance, we have a lot of people outside the Netherlands working for us on a remote basis. Because of legal reasons, very often it's a part-time and freelance. I do also. They're already working for us for years. It's not like a one-off job that we have asked them to do. And here in Amsterdam, for instance, we have an office with 6 people. Now, during Corona time, it's obviously less. In Rotterdam, we have a few people. We have in Ukraine a few developers based. In Latin America. So what I try to do in every country that we go to, that we have at least one representative.
Okay.
Not that this does not mean that they need to live there.
Okay.
For instance, our Brazilian marketing manager lives in Vancouver. But I don't care. I mean, why would I bother where she would live?
Remote,
by coincidence, we have now also launched in Canada, so she will also be responsible for Canada. But that's just simple coincidence. But it's so. I hire based on the locality, so where are people based. I think it would be very much of a struggle if I had to find 30 nationalities here in Amsterdam. I might be able to do so, but it doesn't mean that I'm able to hire the best people. Yep. And now I can really hire, I think, the best people in the country, in the countries themselves.
And do you have then any tips and tricks also for managing a team that remotely as you have?
I think hiring a certain type of people is number one, because I don't feel myself to be a manager, in all honesty. I think what I'm good at is to hire the right people, if I may say this, because I think it's important that you hire people that are independent and self-motivated. And if you're able to achieve this, then there's little management involved. Of course, I need to create the priorities and set the line, you know, the goals where we need to go to, but I do not really intensively manage them. And this is also, I think, a culture at Sidley that it's not very much of a top-down culture. It's very much bottom-up. People are basically responsible for their own work, for their own achievements. So it's not something that I say, okay, you should do this and this and this week. I don't even check when they're working. Nope. And honestly, I don't even care. If they work in the morning, late evening, or they don't work today, I don't really care. If you're in support, yes, you need to answer you need to be on top of the questions that we get. But in all other areas, if you work rather on Sunday than on Monday, then I'm fine with that. Who am I to tell that you are better to work from 9 to 5 on a Monday and Tuesday?
And you started here at Stardock downstairs. And how many team members did you have when you moved out?
Gee, I have no idea. I think the half of what we have now. I have no idea. Really.
Yeah,
probably a bit less, 12 or something. I never really. I always find it very hard to say how many people are you working with, because I know them all by name, but I never
see them all together. No,
I never have counted them. So I always look at Slack. How many people are in the general channel, and I think we have 32 people.
Yeah, the money.
Yeah.
So what do you miss the most about Stardock?
What I like about Stardock is the personal touch, at least in this building, where it's a very informal, relaxed atmosphere that I really like. People know each other, they chat, they have drinks. I think it's really, I really like that laid-back culture. I think it differs a little bit once you become bigger. You also move to an office that allows you to have facilities that are meant for bigger companies. That it gets a little bit more impersonal. But that's what it is. That's the journey. I don't know. But I really like once you're small that you just hang around with fellow entrepreneurs or people that like the same stuff and have drinks and just have fun. Yeah, I really like that here.
Just have fun.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And I was very happy that you were here. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
For your story and for your tips and tricks. I hope they also enjoyed it. So please leave your feedback down in the comments below on our social media channels. You can also watch it on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook and follow us over there. Thank you, and hope to see you soon again.
All right, thank you.